When Victoria's Labor government decided to jump on board with China's so-called Belt and Road Initiative back in 2018, I was certainly one who was calling it out on this station as a win for China that undermined Australia's foreign policy. Now we're seeing the consequences of all this play out. This is infuriating stuff. We have a federal government that has the constitutional responsibility for foreign relations. It's one of the main reasons we have a federal government. And they have the expertise and the experience in this area too. And they decided that it's not in our national interest to sign up to the Belt and Road push. And then China picks off a state government and gets them to sign up instead. That's exactly what Daniel Andrews did. He took Victoria into a deal with China that Canberra was not prepared to embrace. Inexperienced in foreign affairs, without all the apparatus of a Department of Foreign Affairs, ASIO, ACIS, Defence Intelligence Agencies and the Office of National Assessments. Without any of that, the Premier of Victoria went on a long march with China. Now, to give you an idea of the propaganda win, have a look at some of what he signed up to. The agreement between Victoria and China is headed jointly promoting the Silk Road economic belt and the 21st century maritime Silk Road. And in typically grand language, it says in part that both parties should adhere to the principle of mutual consultation, joint efforts and shared benefits, bearing the Silk Road's spirit of peace, cooperation, openness, inclusiveness, mutual learning and mutual benefit. Yep, that's the Chinese Communist regime for you. Openness and inclusiveness. The Beijing government is almost synonymous with openness and inclusiveness, isn't it? Well, I suppose if its citizens are openly critical, they're included in arbitrary imprisonment. Still, as I showed you the other day, China's engagement with Victoria has delivered diplomatic benefits to China. When China used trade rulings to punish Australia for supporting an inquiry into the origins and handling of the coronavirus, the Victorian Treasurer didn't blame China, he blamed his own country.
All I can say is that I don't suppose would come as a surprise to anybody that this was the consequence of the way that the federal government had conducted themselves.
Just to put that into perspective, Canberra got more support on this from Washington than it did from Melbourne.
The Chinese Communist Party chose to threaten Australia with economic retribution for the simple act of asking for an independent inquiry into the origins of the virus. It's not right.
Still, it gets pretty messy because President Trump's aggressive language towards China probably isn't helping us right now anyway. But with money and infrastructure projects now in the mix in Victoria, it's little wonder that Federal Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton wants to know more.
The Belt and Road Initiative is a propaganda exercise from China. This is gravely concerning, and Victoria needs to explain why it's really the only state in the country that has entered into this relationship. It's good for us to have investment from all over the world, including from China, but it needs to be done in the appropriate way with the proper safeguards.
Indeed. China has used our federal system to create dissent in our nation. China has found a way around our federal government and Duchess a state government prepared to do its bidding. China knows precisely what it's doing. I worry that Daniel Andrews does not. This exposes yet another problem with our federation. The federal government and the federal government alone is responsible for our external relations, our foreign affairs. For state governments to undermine that in this way surely is intolerable. An agreement like this shouldn't proceed without the explicit blessing of at least the Foreign Minister, if not the National Parliament. Instead, we're left with Victorian state politicians doing deals and speaking about China on behalf of Australia in conflict with our official foreign policy. None of which is good for Australia, but all of which at the moment is just wonderful for China.